Good evening to the dreamers, the romantics, and the loyal watchers of love's most daring performances. Welcome back to Whispers of Turkish Stars, the corner of the internet where the clamor of spotlight softens and the pulse of the heart takes center stage. We are not just recapping a red carpet, we're slipping behind the velvet rope to witness a confession that shimmered brighter than any jewel. Tonight, we step into the glitter-soaked night of the Elle Style Awards, where a gown, a glance, and a handful of trembling words transformed ceremony into destiny, and where Hazal Subaşı did more than arrive, she declared a direction. Before we stroll hand in hand into the glare of flashbulbs, wrap yourself in our circle of affection. Subscribe to Whispers of Turkish Stars, tap like if this kind of storytelling is your language, and if you're the kind of soul who likes to stand behind a story while it unfolds, the join button is waiting with a warm seat and a whispered secret. Your presence isn't a number here, it's the heartbeat that keeps this stage alive. The Elle Style Awards has always been pure theater, architectural dresses, gravity-defying hair, the sound of cameras like rainfall. Yet this year, amid the couture storm, calm descended on a single moment. It wasn't craft alone, though every stitch was worthy. It wasn't celebrity alone, though the carpet practically bent toward her steps. The shift in the air began when Hazal Subaşı set her heel on the red, and it didn't settle until long after the final applause dissolved into night. Hazal emerged as if she'd been poured from starlight. Her gown captured the camera flashes and returned them as gentle lightning, a luminous cut that honored her shape and let her breathe, details so precise they whispered rather than shouted. Her hair fell in a natural cascade, a refusal to let trends shout over grace. Her makeup traced the map of her face, enhancing, not concealing. Even the skeptics of fashion, the ones who grade with frost in their veins, nodded as if compelled by an invisible conductor. But it wasn't the dress that hypnotized the room. It was the harmony between what she wore and what she carried inside. Because the real event didn't happen on the stage, it happened at the edge of the chaos, where microphones bloom like silver flowers and truth sometimes, unexpectedly, chooses to blossom. After the ceremony, in that tender corridor between spectacle and solitude, Hazal paused for the press, a ritual, yes, but what came next was anything but routine. Questions arrived the way they always do, polite at first and then pressing, circling the topic they all share, her life with Erkan, Meriç, the partner whose name alone can tilt a headline. Hazal smiled the smile people know, warm and unpretentious, but there was a new steadiness behind it, a quiet that felt like resolution. She listened to the question. She listened to her own pulse. And then she answered with a sentence that trembled through the night and kept trembling in the morning. She spoke of urgency, but not panic, of speed, but not recklessness. She said that life keeps teaching them how rare it is to be together, and when you understand that lesson, you stop pretending there is all the time in the world. Her wording was simple, but it rang with that bell-like clarity that turns a line into a milestone. And just like that, the ceremony that was supposed to worship surface became the altar of something deeper. Insiders close to Hazal whisper that this wasn't a spontaneous impulse or a slip of the tongue. Friends who've been near her in recent weeks describe an ease in her voice, a finished sentence feeling in her presence, as if the scatter of life's pieces has lately landed in a pattern that finally makes sense. They say that whatever quiet storms the industry can stir, schedules, scripts, the endless waiting, do not rattle the home she and Erkan have been careful to build. What lives between them, we're told, doesn't flicker. It hums. And still, we must remember the practical weight they carry, two actors with calendars that try their best to tear days in half. Weeks apart, nights where the phone is the only bridge, mornings that start too early and end too late. But that's the detail that makes their vow to move forward now feel not rash, but brave. They don't talk in a vague someday. They talk in calendars. Not the date circled in pen yet, but the courage to trace the circle. When someone asked if the wedding would arrive before the year bows out, Hazal laughed softly, the kind of laugh that hides and reveals at once. She didn't offer numbers. She didn't offer a month. Instead, she said something that felt like a door clicking open. The heart doesn't obey schedules, yet there are days when it taps your shoulder and says, "I'm ready." There it was, the pivot from romantic rumor to romantic intention. The room felt it. You could see it in the faces of other stars, in the way stylists paused, in the quick texts flying from one corner of the hall to another. "Love looks good on her," someone said, and if the ceremony had needed a slogan, there it was. Fashion editors murmured about balance. Directors nodded about timing. Meanwhile, the publicists took notes that probably won't help at all, because how do you manage something that genuine? Talk long enough in these circles and you'll hear it repeated. Erkan has been the kind of support that makes the word support feel too small. It's not rescue. It's not possession. It's the kind of presence that steadies your breath when cameras make it short. They lift each other as if it's the most ordinary thing in the world to be extraordinary together. And when the question arrived, why the rush? Hazal let a quiet fall for one heartbeat and then said the sort of line that becomes a scarf people wrap around themselves in the cold. We don't know what tomorrow plans to take or give, so we want to walk the same road now, not later. It danced through the crowd, and then the city, and then the internet decided to make it immortal. Your timelines felt it. Fans clipped the moment and turned it into art. 1,000 quote cards in 1,000 styles, all saying the same tender truth. Some wrote that this is how love sounds when it's certain. Others skipped straight to the dream: dresses, music, the first dance, who will attend, who will cry. If you listened closely, you could hear the chorus of eager hearts humming along. And what of Erkan Meriç, the other name in this poem? He did not stand in the center of the light, but he threaded the evening like a theme. Sources close to him say that he heard Hazal's words and smiled in that quiet way he does, and said to his own circle something that braided perfectly with hers, that building together, sharing one vision, is the sweetest work a person can do. A man doesn't need to shout when the harmony is already full. Which is why the L-Style Awards felt less like a party and more like a chapter heading. Under the gleam and thunder, a love story moved its bookmark from one place to another. People who followed them from their earliest screens know this feeling, the moment when a pair stops being two actors who intersect and starts being a household under construction. This night wasn't only trophies and tailoring for Hazal. It was an unbuttoning of the guarded place where public figures usually hide the most precious thing they possess. She let the country see the outline of her dream, and that kind of courage is rarer than any gemstone sewn into a bodice. It tells you everything you need to know about where she's heading and who's walking beside her. Turn your eyes to the horizon, because that's where they're looking. News about Hazal and Erkan now travels with the urgency usually saved for royal families. And yet the beauty here is not perfection, it's sincerity. Love that does not pretend to be easy, only true. Love that does not delay for the sake of choreography, only moves when the heart says move. Now, I'll ask you the question we're all secretly braiding into our thoughts: do you believe in speeding toward the thing that feels certain? Or do you think love, like wine, needs the slow patience of time? Say it in the comments like you're telling a friend a secret. And if you want to keep standing with us in this place where celebrity meets soul, that join button is open. Your support lets us chase these delicate moments and honor them with care. In the hours after the awards, the city glowed with secondhand romance. Cafes played softer songs. Cars seemed to move more gently. You might say that's imagination, but then you didn't watch the timeline swell with replies that read like poems. This is how you talk when you're sure. I've waited to hear someone say it like that. I'm calling my person right now. A confession became an invitation, and strangers felt braver together. Hazal's fashion, of course, earned its own avalanche of praise. Leading stylists wrote that the gown proved a thesis: when the dress is honest and the woman is honest, the camera surrenders. The silhouette traced confidence without trapping it. The fabric caught light without swallowing it. The look wasn't just timeless, it refused to pick a time at all. But it's what came after the photographs that will live longer. 2 sentences from Hazal, half a sentence from Erkan, and suddenly the narrative shifted. Their story is no longer will they? The story is how soon. And if you stood near the press line, you might have heard another rumor flicker, that their calendars are already quietly negotiating with fate, that the pieces are lining up with a soft click. None of this would land with such force if it weren't believable, and it is, because their public personas have always leaned towards steadiness rather than performance. Hazal has the kind of candor that makes you feel like she's telling the truth even when she's telling a joke. Erkan has the kind of gentleness that makes power feel safe. Together they look less like a headline and more like a promise. Of course, not everyone runs toward the altar with confetti in their eyes. Some voices muttered that haste can bruise. But even those skeptics were quieted by the tone of Hazal's words, not reckless, not naive. Reverent. As if she'd held the notion in her palm for a long time, turned it toward the sun, and only now decided to share its shine with us. And let's not underestimate the professional machinery still churning. Filming, rehearsals, early flights, late returns. The grown-up part of love is learning to set the table even when the clock is rude. Rumor insists they protect their time like a sacred appointment. Mornings are for messages. Evenings are for bridged distance. Weekends become small countries carved out of duty. Friends describe them as a partnership with scaffolding built, tested, wrapped in trust. If that sounds unromantic, you've never seen scaffolding hold something beautiful while it rises. They laugh when it rains. They forgive when it storms. They've been practicing for marriage, and maybe that's why the word no longer feels like a mountain but a path. Inside the awards hall, as Hazal moved through clusters of congratulations, someone mentioned Erkan's name, and a bright flicker crossed her eyes, the sort of light you can't fake because it arrives from somewhere too deep to rehearse. That brightness followed her all night, a tiny star acting like it belonged to her instead of the sky. By the time the last car door shut and the red carpet emptied, a different kind of carpet was unrolling in our imaginations, the aisle, the petals, the whisper that becomes a vow. No one knows the exact date, and maybe that's the magic. The heart doesn't wait for publicists to finish a draft. The heart keeps its own calendar and writes in ink. If you've been with us for a while, you know Whispers of Turkish Stars is less about noise and more about notes that linger. Nights like this prove why we do it. When a celebrity's words make your own life feel clearer, when a dress is just a doorway and the person inside steps forward brave and whole, we consider it our duty to catch that glimmer and hold it up for you. So we'll keep watching, not for scandal, but for the subtle choreography of two people turning toward one future. We'll follow the quiet moves, a ring that might appear, a location that might trend, a family gathering that suddenly means more. We'll trace how their careers and their commitment tie themselves into one ribbon. And we'll do it with the same tenderness they offered us tonight. Because that's the other lesson hidden in Hazal's moment, that fame can be kind. That a platform can be used to say the most private sentence out loud in the gentlest way. That the biggest room in the city can go quiet for love. Before we say goodnight, take one more breath with me and hold on to the feeling this night gave you. Maybe it made you brave. Maybe it made you call someone. Maybe it made you trust that the fastest way to something true is often the straight line. Whatever it stirred, keep it. And keep us, too. Subscribe to Whispers of Turkish Stars, pass this story to a friend who believes in the beautiful urgency of love, and if you want to help us keep the lights warm and the voices soft, the join button is your key to our inner circle. We'll meet you there with gratitude and new tales. As for Hazal Subaşı and Erkan Meriç, the path is already glowing. The city knows it. The fans know it. Tonight proved it. Not because it was perfect. Because it was real. And because it dared to hurry toward happiness while the world watched and, for once, didn't look away. Thank you for giving your ears and your heart to this moment. This has been your late-night postcard from the L-Style Awards, sealed with hope, stamped with courage, and addressed to anyone who has ever needed a reason to move closer. Until next time, may you find a love that makes the clock feel too slow, and the future too beautiful to postpone.